How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. A lot to talk about here on the show today, including Jeff Hardy undergoing surgery for his knee injury. If you watch Smackdown on Tuesday night, the Hardy Boys came out. They were, in fact, the WWE Smackdown Tag Team Champions, and they won the titles a few weeks ago, before the Superstar Shakeup, actually, because there were teams jumping ship. I think every single team on SmackDown actually was jumping ship to the Raw brand. And then they vanished. And the reason was Jeff Hardy injured himself at a house show. And so in a moment of pure comedy, Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy come out on SmackDown, and they show a video. And it is a video of Lars Sullivan, and he is destroying everybody. He destroys this guy, he destroys that guy, he destroys this guy, he destroys that guy. Guess who the one guy was he didn't destroy in that video? Jeff Hardy. They then go to Jeff Hardy, and says, "My knee was destroyed by Lars Sullivan." So they vacated the WWE Tag Team titles. Lars Sullivan came out and he killed Matt Hardy. He actually never even got his hands on Jeff either. So to this day, I'm not sure Jeff has ever been touched by Lars Sullivan. But somehow Lars Sullivan is injured Jeff Hardy's knee. Jeff Hardy out of action, probably 6 to 9 months, full reconstructive knee surgery, and obviously that means he will be out of action for some time. Matt Hardy, we'll see what happens. I've heard talk that perhaps Matt Hardy will bring back Big Money Matt in the meantime. We shall see what they end up doing. But he's out of action. We could talk about that, as well as the lineup for the Money in the Bank show. I've got some odds for Money in the Bank, which mean nothing this far out, and I mean nothing. But I'm still going to read them anyway, because it's interesting what the odds makers, who they feel are the favorites in these particular matches. So we'll talk about that here today. We have got the news that the Department of Justice has ordered Disney to sell off 22 Fox regional sports networks, and they're going to Sinclair, the home of ROH, which may mean more viewership for Ring of Honor. Back in a moment to kick all of this off, Wrestling Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive also of Wrestling. Actually, Mike Sempervive's not here. What am I talking about? I'm all alone today. Mike Sempervive's got a new schedule and is exhausted, so he's going to sleep today, and I believe he has a couple of days off next week, which he very much deserves, since I think I missed 2 straight weeks of programs in April. So I'm holding down the fort here today, which means, as I often say, you, my friends, you can be the special co-host here on this show today, if only for a couple of moments, and it's free. You do not have to donate to Whale Scout to be a co-host today. 844-411-5411 is the phone number. That is toll-free, 844-411-5411. You can send your text messages to 425-780-7566. I have not seen it yet, but I have been alerted that the Dragon Lee Taiji Ishimori match from last night's New Japan was incredible. I know you are gobsmacked that Dragon Lee versus Taiji Ishimori could be incredible, but apparently it was. So if you get a chance to check that out, do so. I believe Dave and I will be recapping UFC and a bunch of New Japan on tomorrow night's Wrestling Observer Radio, only for subscribers at WrestlingObserver.com. And as far as the other big news from the weekend, or one of the big stories, as you are well aware if you listened to the show yesterday, WWE announced there was going to be a takeover on June 1st. And that's all they told us. Okay? It's May 3rd. Yes, it's May 3rd right now. And that means the show is in less than 4 weeks, and they don't know where it's going to be. They announced that on Monday, Triple H will announce where it is going to be on his social media. And it appears, this is unconfirmed, it appears it will probably be taking place in Bridgeport, Connecticut at the Webster Bank Arena there on June 1st. So we'll find out on Monday. Wherever you are in this country, hold your breath. Maybe you're going to get a takeover. Probably not. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. What's going on?
It was on the April 9th edition that Lars Sullivan destroyed Jeff Hardy, because I just watched the video. And my question for today is, on Daniel Bryan, what's the riskiest bump you think he's taken since returning from his concussion injury? For me, I think it was when he was in the Elimination Chamber in case he bounced his head off the top of the Elimination Chamber like a pinball.
That was fake, Ryan. What would you like me to answer your question?
On Daniel Bryan, like, what's the riskiest bump you think that he's
Okay, I'll answer your
For
question.
me, it was the...
Yeah, it wasn't,
Kofi
Ryan.
Kingston.
I'm telling you that when he bounced his head off the top of the cell, that was not for real. That was fake. But I can tell you what the riskiest bumps that he has taken since returning are. And I'm glad you asked that question, Ryan. Because a couple of days ago, I stated that I was fixing to be really mad about Daniel Bryan, but I was just going to wait and find out what was going on. And I'm not furious now because his career will continue, okay? But I am mildly upset still. So I want to preface this by saying that from all accounts, Daniel Bryan is one of the smartest guys in all of professional wrestling. I've heard people give him all sorts of labels to explain just how smart he is. Genius. Beyond genius, I heard somebody say. One of the smartest guys you've ever met. So, I'm going to presume that's true. Now, with all that said, I'm not a genius, okay? I'm not. I do, however, know that if I am wrestling and I suffer a neck injury of some sort, and I am forced to rehab or maybe even undergo surgery on my neck, okay? Non-genius sitting here, I can tell you that the one thing that I'm not going to do when I come back is find out if my neck is going to hold up. I'm not going to test my neck, okay? Daniel Bryan came back from a neck injury, and in his very first match, he was doing a spot with Luke Harper, and Luke Harper tossed him and dropped him right on his head. Daniel Bryan landed right on his neck. And I was flabbergasted that someone so smart could do something so dumb. Why would you ever want to test whether your neck is going to hold up after coming back from neck surgery? Why would you do that? Like, it's a pass-fail, okay? He passed, thankfully, but he very well could have failed by testing and taking a bump onto his head and neck to find out if his neck was going to hold up. Mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing. So, furthermore, as I noted yesterday, I don't know why Daniel Bryan has been out of action since WrestleMania. But I only know this. Every time anybody else has gotten hurt, the WWE, there's an injury report, and they basically list what everybody was injured, what injury they have suffered, and how long they're going to be out of action. Now, the one thing that they normally keep quiet is concussions. They've kept concussions quiet with people like Alexa Bliss and Sasha Banks and others. And later, it usually comes out that, in fact, the person was out due to concussion. Like, Alexa Bliss pretty much made it public after she had vanished for a long time, and they would never say why she was gone. We presumed it was a concussion for a lot of reasons. And then later, she ends up going on her social media talking about these concussions, and that was the worst concussion she'd ever had, and she was driving around, didn't know where she was at, and they didn't mention it was a concussion, and it was a concussion, okay? So the first piece of evidence that he suffered a concussion was they wouldn't mention what it was. Now, the second reason that I presume that is, if Jeff Hardy suffers a knee injury, he goes in, he gets his knee worked on, and the doctor says you're out 6 to 9 months. If somebody separates their shoulder, they go to the doctor says you're going to be out such and such an amount of time. Daniel Bryan was out after WrestleMania. It was supposed to be Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston at the next pay-per-view, at Money in the Bank. But Daniel Bryan was removed, and they replaced him with Kevin Owens, who was not supposed to turn heel. That was a change. They turned Kevin Owens heel so he could replace Daniel Bryan in the feud with Kofi Kingston. Well, turns out Daniel Bryan is back this coming Tuesday. He's been cleared from whatever the injury was. So, that to me says that whatever injury he suffered was something where they could not accurately determine how long he would be out of action. That does not sound like a knee injury. That does not sound like a shoulder injury. That sounds like a concussion. So, I presume he was out with a concussion. Now, the reason I bring all of this up is because at WrestleMania this year, there was a spot in the Kofi Kingston-Daniel Bryan match where Kofi Kingston grabbed Daniel Bryan's arms and he began stomping on his head. Now, I realize that the idea is you don't really stomp on somebody's head. But as everybody should know by now, based on the injuries and WWE and every other company in this world, accidents happen in pro wrestling. And sometimes you accidentally connect when you were supposed to not connect. So my point of all of this is, if you're Daniel Bryan and you are coming back from a head injury that ended your career for 2 years and nearly permanently ended your career, why would you ever any spot that involves somebody holding onto your hands and stomping on your head? Why would you ever do that? At least if I'm going to deliver a super kick to somebody, that person has their hands by their side, and they can put their hand up and catch the kick if maybe I'm a little bit off on my timing or whatever. It's still not great because I still made contact, but at least there's a hand there. When you're holding your partner's hands and stomping on their head, they can't block their face at all. And if you watch that match, Kofi stomped him a couple of times. And when it was over, Daniel Bryan was gone for 3 weeks. I don't understand when people have knee injuries and they tell someone to work over their knee. I don't understand when people have shoulder injuries and they have people work over their shoulder. And I certainly don't understand when Ibushis and Naitos have neck problems and they do matches built around getting dropped on their head to injure their neck. I realize it's not real. I just had a match on Saturday, but you know what? Accidents happen. I don't understand why Daniel Bryan's let anyone anywhere near his head ever. He doesn't need it. He can have great matches without people stomping on his head. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. No Mike Sempervive today. You can be the co-host here today. Give us a call, 844-411-5411. Text messages, 425-780-7566. If you go to my Twitter, at Bryan Alvarez, I have created a fundraiser page for Give Big 2019 and Whale Scout. Whale Scout needs everyone's support to survive. It is a 501c3 nonprofit, and it survives entirely on donations. And all of your donations don't go to paying anyone. Your donations go to buying trees, buying mulch, buying shovels, printing materials for Whale Scout helping out events. Helps keep everything going. And Give Big 2019 is coming. And I will match up to $1,000 in donations. So every dollar that you donate, I will match up to $1,000 in my Give Big 2019 campaign page. And it is up at Bryan Alvarez on Twitter, at Bryan Alvarez. Give Big 2019. You can search for Whale Scout or F4W Online, or just use the link that is up on my page right now. I want to thank everybody in advance who has donated. Very much appreciate it. And that's up once again at Bryan Alvarez. This person here says, "Hello, Bryan Alvarez. I agree with what you said on yesterday's episode about promoting professional wrestling being central to perhaps turning WWE Raw around. I'd like to turn this around. What promotion do you believe deserves some praise for doing this properly? NXT and New Japan have been fun to follow. What else is there that we can check out and that we will be happy with?" Well, my friend, let's see how many can rattle off the top of my head. New Japan Pro Wrestling, All Japan Pro Wrestling, Noah, Stardom, Progress, Rev Pro, Ring of Honor, MLW, Black Label Pro, and All Pro Wrestling, since I'm there, obviously. CMLL, AAA, I think pretty much every indie promotion in the entire country. Impact Wrestling, what am I forgetting? All Elite Wrestling, Double or Nothing. It's going to be coming up in May. I mean, have I forgotten anything? I'm sure I've forgotten like 2,000 companies. But the point is, I think every other wrestling promotion in the entire world promotes something resembling professional wrestling. UFC, Bellator, can I throw those two in there? Everybody promotes professional wrestling except one company, and that is WWE. Right now, they are not promoting pro wrestling. They are promoting a bunch of things happening. And I was reading the New Observer. I think it was either the New Observer or last week's Observer. And Dave was talking about the decline in ratings and Saudi Arabia and everything like that. And he was talking about how perhaps the booking has just gotten worse since the fall. And he actually said, which is not true, and I must take exception to that, The booking from fall until today is the dirt worst booking I've ever seen from WWE in my entire lifetime. And I've been following it. I've been following it as a fan since 1987, and I've been writing about it on a weekly basis since 1995. Going on 25 years, I have never seen a period in WWE history as awful in terms of booking as the fall of 2018 through today. So, it's wretched. Absolutely wretched. It's not pro wrestling right now. It's just something else. I mean, it's always been something a little different from pro wrestling, but now it's really not pro wrestling. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. What is going on?
Hey, Brian. This is Matthew in Louisville. Just wanted to talk about the ratings. Do you know if they have any plan in place to try to turn this around?
Plan?
I know they've made a...
No, my friend. No. You know how I know that? Because it might have been 2 investors' calls ago. Vince was talking about how the house show numbers were falling, and he went on this big, long spiel about how we know it's wrong, and we have a plan, and we're going to turn it around, and it has now been going on 4, 5, 6 months, and they are exactly the same. What he said at the investors' call, his plan to turn things around, all he said was a lot of wrestlers were injured, and now they're not injured, and so things are going to turn around. Plus, we're going on Fox, and they're going to promote us better. That's his plan to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, I knew they made a few new creative hires and things like that. Like, I know Bruce is back, but I mean, there's also something that we really haven't talked a whole lot about, and that is the turnover rate. As far as the wrestlers wanting out, all the people who work behind the scenes wanting out. I mean, it's just really a kind of a crazy time to me.
It's a very crazy time. I want to thank you very much for the call. I mean, one of the things about the turnover rate is the turnover rate for writers has always been high. It's nothing new today. And you can hire all the creative writers that you want. You can hire Bruce Pritchard. You can hire someone that works on HBO documentaries. You could hire Shakespeare. It doesn't matter. The writers are going to write stuff, but Vince is the one who is putting these shows together and changing things around every Monday. Guess what? This past Monday, the script got turned in right before the show went on the air. Again. Okay? They had a week to work on this, and they worked on it very hard. And they show up, and on Monday, Vince just tears the whole thing up, starts all over again. Like, why? I don't understand why they even bother. Like, why not just write Raw on Monday? It doesn't matter what you write the rest of the week anyway. The guy's going to come in and turn it all around. Shakespeare could write a sonnet, and Vince is going to show up on Monday, throw it out, and write something new. And then they go on television, and it's a mess. So, yeah, it doesn't matter what writers. It's not writers. It's Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn. Very antiquated ways of thinking. And here we are in 2019. This person here says, do you think that AEW could be a good alternative to WWE? Not like Impact, but a real competitor. Well, it's impossible to say. We don't know what television broadcast affiliates are going to be on. If they get TBS or TNT, and they open up with 1.5 million viewers, which is probably going to be difficult, but who knows? I mean, yeah, they can be a real competitor. I mean, to what degree, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be very hard to compete with WWE. They're a $7 billion company. And it's just, there are a lot of fans that they only want to watch WWE. We hear from them every day. So I don't think it's going to be a new Monday Night Wars or anything like that, but I do think that they can be competitive. And I think that they can present a product that a lot of fans will watch. And I think that hopefully when WWE sees what's going on, they'll maybe make some changes. But again, it's the same deal. The person that made the changes during the Monday Night Wars that turned it around was Vince. That's a Vince from 25 years ago. We're talking a 73-year-old Vince McMahon who's also running a football league right now. What's this guy going to do? He's had years to turn this around. This thing started falling in 2014. It's 2019. It's been 5 years of nothing but straight decline. What's he going to do? I'd love to know. I wish he could. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. What's going on?
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Very good.
So you're probably going to dislike my question given what you just ranted about, but and it's hypothetical, which I know are probably your favorites. But if you could change one thing about the product, short of getting rid of people like Vince McMahon, what would be like your starting point? What would be the one thing they come to you and say, Brian, you can change one thing about the current product?
My friend. It's you have to get rid of Vince. They're literally, there's nothing that I could say. I could say,
I completely agree with you.
I could say you need to treat the titles. Actually, they actually treat the titles fairly well, so I can't even use that one. But I mean, you need to book the people that come up from NXT better. What? He's had a million opportunities. He doesn't do it. That's not going to happen. I mean, if they treated the titles poorly, you could say, well, you gotta treat the titles better. Like Brock Lesnar was never on TV as champion. Guess what? Seth Rollins is on TV every week as champion. Hasn't meant a thing. I mean, there's nothing that I can say that he's not going to just go in and mess up. So it begins and ends with Vince. That's it.
That's a fair point. And I mean, even like when it's like in the short term, and God bless these people, but they just have all this hope, and they're just like, something good will happen. And I just always have the thing of like, they're going to screw it up somehow, and they pretty much do every time. They hot shot. Remember how awesome that Becky Ronda segment was right after the Rumble?
Yeah.
And I think you said it like, yeah, this is the main event of Mania. They'd be crazy not to go with this. And then by the time, it was so cold by the time it got to Mania, it was just like, man. And even that cool angle they had on the Go Home show couldn't salvage it, just because they had to get the McMahons involved, and they had to do all this other stuff, and just Vince had to rewrite everything on the fly. Charlotte randomly wins the title from Asuka. It's just, they ask us to commit so much time, and we're not rewarded for that commitment in any way, for paying attention or for investing our time into it. And like, why should I do that then? I find it increasingly hard to do that.
Okay, well listen, here's another one. Even if you move Raw to 2 hours, Smackdown is 2 hours. And there is often very little storyline consistency from SmackDown to SmackDown. So as a viewer, why watch this show if it's not going to pay off for me the week after? That's a huge problem right there. 14 years ago, everyone. 14 years ago, Triple H and Batista were in the middle of actually one of the better storylines in WWE history, when Batista was going to break away from Evolution and challenge Triple H, and Triple H was pretending to be his friend, but he was having people run him over behind this, all of this stuff. It was a great storyline leading to WrestleMania. Hunter had to beg Vince McMahon not to do that match before Mania, because Vince was going to do it early. He wasn't even going to wait until WrestleMania for that storyline. Hunter had to beg him to hold it off until WrestleMania. That was 14 years ago. This is a Vince that is 14 years older. So you can't say, well, if they just, built up things better. None of that's going to happen. It's not going to happen. I hate to be negative, but it's just not going to happen. I've been waiting years, and it's not changing. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air.
Hello, Brian. This is Bruce in Huntsville, your temporary co-host.
Yes, Bruce.
I wanted to ask a quick question. We were talking about Lars earlier, and I know that there's a massive disconnect between NXT and the main roster, but I kind of wonder why they're not giving Lars any promo time, because a big part of his character in NXT was being eloquent and being able to speak and letting people know what he thought and that he actually believed what he thought. And I kind of want to know, is it because they may not trust him after his whole, breakdown escapade, or is there something else, do you think?
I will be happy to answer this after the break. Back in a moment, Wrestling Observer Live. Back at the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. No Mike Sempervive today. You can join us, 844-411-5411. My main man, Bruce, had a question about Lars Sullivan. Why is he not talking? Well, the answer is because Vince doesn't want him to talk right now. I wish I could give you a more detailed explanation, but, forget Lars. Like, every single person who gets called up from NXT gets Vince McMahon's stamp put upon them. Maybe Lars is going to talk. I don't know. I do know that I think Lars is a pretty good promo, but I liked Lars better when he was a silent giant monster that just massacred people. That was my opinion. There's a decent chance that if I called him up, I wouldn't have him talk, at least for a long time. So that's probably Vince's mindset. His monsters don't talk a lot, historically. So I think that's probably the only reason why Lars Sullivan isn't talking right now. Has nothing to do with anything outside of wrestling. This person here says, I absolutely loved your book, Death of WCW, and its 10th anniversary edition. Are you planning on writing any more wrestling books? What are some entertaining books in your opinion? Funny you should ask. I have a new book that is coming out in July. It is called 100 Things That WWE Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. And today, the book was sent to the printer. So it is on schedule for a July release. It will be available on Amazon.com, as well as Barnes & Noble and every other bookstore that still exists in this country. You'll be able to grab 100 Things WWE Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die from Triumph Books. So check it out. It's big. Like, I don't know how big it was supposed to be, but I very much overshot my target. And even though it is a list of 100 things, it's actually... And Lance wrote about this. He can tell you about it on Figure 4 Daily today because he wrote the foreword. It's a pretty good history book on WWE. So if you want to pretty much know everything there is to know about WWE, this is a great book in which to do so. It's not the most detailed book on every story in the world because I have to write 100 entries, and there is a limit. But I think that you will very much enjoy it. So it's coming out in July, and it may be available for pre-sale at Amazon.com right now. 100 Things That WWE Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. So head up there and check it out. Let's go to the phones. You are on the air. What is going on? You waited on hold the whole time and then you hung up when it was your turn. Are you kidding me? Let's try this fella. You're on the air. What's going... You're on... That was 3 in a row. That was 3 in a row right there. That was weird. Maybe it was a phone problem. I guess we'll find out. 844-411-5411 is the phone number. That is 844-411-5411. Let's jump back into the text messages here. We'll try the phones again in a second. Hopefully these people don't hang up this time. Hopefully they understand how to use a phone. This person here says, why do wrestlers go from telling amazing stories in the ring in NXT to not be able to do that at all on the main roster? I thought of this after watching Johnny Gargano's match at NXT TakeOver in New York. It's just, NXT is different from WWE. There's a lot of things going on. In NXT, they're all down there in Florida at the Performance Center, and they can go in there and they can practice and practice and practice and go over their match over and over and over and over and over again. And you don't get that opportunity on the main roster unless you happen to be working together on house shows. Then you kind of have a chance to practice your match because you do it over and over again at house shows. But it's very, very different. The wrestlers takeover in Triple H's mind is very much about blowing off feuds and match quality. And so it's a 5-match show. The individuals are allowed to go in there and go for a long time and tell their story and work the match they want to work. And on the main roster, WWE pay-per-views are about being whatever a WWE pay-per-view is. Got to have a lot of video packages, got to have angles, got to have Elias out there singing, people get their time cut, even though the shows go like 50 hours. I mean, it's just different. And one guy runs his promotion one way, and the other guy runs his promotion the other way. And so when guys from one guy's promotion go to the other promotion, they got to play the game the way that Vince plays the game. And he plays the game very different than the way that Triple H plays the game. Let's try this again. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. What's up?
Hey, Brian. It's Kenny in Myrtle Beach. How you doing?
Yes, Kenny. Excellent job utilizing the telephone.
I always try. I don't understand why Vince is making some of the hiring decisions he's making, specifically on his writing team. And I don't know if you've addressed this on an episode of Wrestling Observer Live earlier this week. I have not been able to listen to the show this week, but the fact that he hired comedy writers, sitcom writers.
Yeah, he likes comedy.
Well, that's the thing, is that he may like comedy, but when you hire sitcom writers, and you've complained about this before, the fact that the show has no continuity at all anymore. Things are picked up and dropped, sometimes in the middle of a show, it seems.
Yeah.
Comedy writers, sitcom writers, are not used to writing episodic television. They write episodes of TV that you catch when you can, that don't necessarily have to be viewed in any kind of specific order.
You're absolutely right.
Usually don't have any kind of arc. Why not hire, and I know this is going to sound stereotypical and dumb, but why not hire soap opera writers?
They have.
A writer for a soap opera is used to cranking out a ton of material for a week. They got to have 5 new episodes throughout the week, and are turning those out for many, many weeks during the year. They don't have just a regular 24-episode season. These are writers who are used to writing under pressure and juggling a lot of characters and storylines. Why not hire, the biggest shows on television, Game of Thrones, The Expanse, shows like that are more compact, but they're used to cranking up the dramatic tension and able to carry a storyline. I just feel like hiring a bunch of comedy writers, it almost makes me wonder if Vince Russo's back on the staff.
Well, my friend, let me ask you a question here. So what if you are a seasoned soap opera writer, and you've been doing this for 15 years, and WWE hires you, and Vince says, we got this new character, Bobby Roode, and he is going to debut, and what I want is for him to beat this guy Ricochet. And so write a storyline of where Bobby Roode's going to go from here. So you go home, and you write a story that begins with Bobby Roode getting a big win over Ricochet, and you write a story that's going to lead to Money in the Bank with Bobby Roode, and then you do this entire thing, and you come to work on Monday, and Vince says, Bobby Roode's not going to be on the show, and we're not going to do anything with Bobby Roode, and I want Ricochet, who lost last week, to end up in the Money in the Bank match. And that's it. His word is law. What do you do?
And that's an excellent point. I completely agree.
There's nothing you can do.
The biggest problem. That's the biggest problem is Vince making these last-minute changes after all this work has been put in. It doesn't surprise me that these folks are just burning out left and right. But the other thing you have to consider is, what is it doing to the interest in the show when you have all this comedy that Vince likes? You look at what happened with the Revival this week. It's obvious he's doing this because they won't sign a renewed contract. They're probably headed off to either the independent scene or to AEW. What is doing some kind of gag where they're doing, quite frankly, a gay joke with them shaving each other's backs in the shower? Is that supposed to make them want to stay?
No. Vince doesn't want him to stay. I mean, he wants him to stay, but he's resigned himself to the fact that they're not going to stay. And so he's going to write some comedy to humiliate them. I mean, I just watched an episode of Superstars from 1992. Okay? Vince loves comedy. There's comedy all over that show. I mean, you could go back to Tuesday Night Titans in the mid-'80s. Comedy. From the day that Vince took over from his father, Vince loves goofy comedy. He's loved it in the 80s. He's loved it in the 90s, DX. He's loved it in the 2000s. He loves it today. And there is a place for comedy in a wrestling show. I mean, All In, Sold Out. You ever watch Being the Elite? There's tons of comedy in Being the Elite. Like, you can do comedy as long as you build up your main rivalries in a serious manner. The problem is sometimes they build up their main rivalries in a comedic manner. The problem is that I don't think Vince understands that when your world champion comes out and throws pancakes to the crowd, I mean, the fans like the guy, they cheer for him, but that ain't a world champion. And Smackdown did 1.8 million viewers. Opened the show with a guy throwing pancakes. I mean, that's not the entire reason, but that's one of many reasons the fans aren't wrestling anymore. They don't want their world champion coming out throwing pancakes. So there's nothing that any writer from any genre can do to turn this around, no matter how great a writer they are, if they show up on Monday and Vince just throws it all out and starts over again. It's just not going to work. Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. What's going on? Caller, you're on the air. What's happening?
This is Jim from Virginia. How y'all doing today?
Yes, Jim.
Last night or early this morning, I got the privilege to watch Tessa Blanchard and Gail Kim wrestle. That is a must-see. That's one of the best women's wrestling matches I've seen in a long time.
I told you.
You were exactly right. Well, my question is, Tessa made Gail tap out. What kind of arm lock was she using on her?
I did not see the match. I just was told by everybody that watched it on Sunday that the match was great. It may have been a mushroom hold.
It was. Mushroom. It was some kind of arm lock. I couldn't tell exactly what it was. And
was it the best Gail Kim match you've ever seen? Was it the best Tessa match you've ever seen? People said it was the best match they'd ever seen from either of them. And Gail had some great matches.
I agree with that.
Better than her matches
I'd
with...
give it 5 stars.
5 stars, wow. Better than her matches with Awesome Kong?
Yeah, because Tessa can move a whole lot better than Awesome Kong.
Wow. Well, hey, that's awesome. Did you watch the rest of the show or just that match?
I just watched that match.
Just that match. Well, there you go. There's Jim's recommendation, everybody. I want to thank you very much for the call. This person says, any news on creative plans for Daniel Bryan? My friend, I don't want to depress everybody, but no, of course not. If there was a plan for Daniel Bryan today, it would be different by Tuesday. That's the story of WWE in the last 8 months now. It's a story forever, but more so than ever before. I mean, doesn't matter what plans they have for Daniel Bryan. Doesn't even matter what they've written for Daniel Bryan today. It will all change on Tuesday. So there are no plans until he actually appears on television doing something. And then whatever he's doing, there's a 50% chance it'll change by the following week. Person says the answer is simple. Kill the brand split, recombine the entire roster, and get rid of the dead weight, freshen up matches and storylines, and Vince needs to retire. Well, you got the last part right, but everything else, it's irrelevant. Brand split, no brand split, doesn't matter. The lead up to WrestleMania this year, there practically was no brand split. There were people going show to show, working both shows. It made zero difference. Zero difference. The numbers continue to fall like they always fall. Person says it seems like WWE is trying not to book a pro wrestling show. Vince gave up on Luke Harper because he didn't have a good southern accent. Vince has taken up storylines to bury the Revival, a team that doesn't want to be part of the show. Nah, this is his vision of pro wrestling, but he forgets it every week. Back in a moment, Observer Live. You know, I do hate being so depressing here, but like every text message question I get, I just have a depressing answer. This person says, are there any tag teams they can bring up or call up to help fill the roster on SmackDown? Yeah, there's teams they could call up, but you know what? In the last 5 months, they've called up 10 people, and they've used exactly 2 of them. They've done nothing with the rest of them. They could call up Demolition. They could call up anybody. Doesn't mean that Vince is going to do anything with them. He used them for a week, and then he forgets about him. He's on to something else. I hate to be depressing, but like that's what we're dealing with right now. And I don't know when or if it is going to change anytime soon. Bert says, you're never alone in the WWE universe, Brian. Actually, in the WWE universe, I am very alone. Rest of the universe, I am not. What do you think WWE will do with Brock Lesnar? Seth will most likely beat him in Saudi Arabia, so after that it's clear he won't be in the title picture. So who do you see him feuding with? Well, I mean, if you want to make a new Brock Lesnar out of Lars Sullivan, I mean, the answer should be Lars Sullivan. Lars goes on a tear. Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman, they challenge him, and you do a match at SummerSlam, and Lars beats the guy. And he's your new big monster. Do I think they're going to do that, just have Lars this early beat Brock Lesnar? I don't think so. But hey, if I wanted to make a new monster, that's how I'd do it. So I guess we shall find out. We're out of time, everybody. I want to thank you all for listening here today. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. We've got all sorts of things coming up on the front page of WrestlingObserver.com, including a new show with Lance Storm this afternoon, which you can also check out on video.f4wonline.com. Video.f4wonline.com, the home for Wrestling Observer Live, Bryan and Vinny, and many others as well, so check that out. And WrestlingObserver.com, the place to go for archives of these shows. 10,000 shows in the archives. New shows added every day. We're out of time. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next time. Wrestling Observer Live.